who discovered Bruce Willis and did some of the Die Hard stuff. Been in the industry for, it was William Morris for years. He optioned it, and we went through basically what I'll just say is rewrite hell. I mean, we must have done it. In 2012, Hangman was originally a found footage movie.
Oh, wow.
Actually, that's many iterations of that script had gone. Yeah, found footage kind of came and went in the amount of time it took us to go through the development stages of that movie. In a way, I was glad about that, because the script we were very meticulous. Anytime the camera was shut off, anytime, we made sure that logically when it was in the found footage frame, it was very specific, and we didn't want to cut any corners. Then had a couple of different directors that were attached. We had talked to a couple of different directors. Every time a director was somewhat attached or interested, a script, went in different directions. And then I met a really great director out of the UK named Phil Hawkins. He had done a movie called The Last Showing with Robert Englund, and I had seen it, and I thought it was great for the budget and what he was able to do. And it was one of the times I'd seen. I think Robert, Nightmare on Elm Street, such a huge movie for me personally, and just a huge fan of the movie. It's one of the reasons I got into writing some of the horror stuff. I had told the producers, why don't you see if Phil will do it? Get Phil in. So Phil had come in, and Phil was going to do it for a while. We worked with Phil on a draft, Charles, myself, and Phil. And that's pretty close to the draft. At least it's the start. It was pulled out of found footage with Phil. And then they started going to some of the bigger name actors once Phil had kind of come in and helped us out with that. And Al was one of those actors. We got Al, and then Johnny Martin ended up directing it. Phil didn't direct it for many different reasons, but so yeah, I didn't really have much to say in regards to getting Al involved, but it was obviously one of those surreal moments in a career where you get the call that Al Pacino is going to do your movie, and you're like, no, okay, really, who's pranking me, right? So yeah, and so it's part of me, my feet still haven't touched the ground, and I think my wife at one point, Al had I was very meticulous, so would ask questions like the detective or the police officer that finds the first body, what's her backstory, and she's got like 4 seconds of screen time, but he wanted to know every little nook and cranny of the process of the script, everyone involved. But he and I started working on the script before production, and every day was like calling me. And at one point I remember saying to my wife, like, oh God, Al's calling me again. And she's like, do you realize what you just said? And I said, oh yeah, that's
hashtag first world problems.
Yeah. Kind of complaining that Al Pacino is calling me. And I'd missed a couple of calls organically, not on purpose. And so I have some voicemails that I've saved. So whenever I get in a state of dealing with depression or just frustration, or just had a rough day, or even if I just want to get motivated, I just play that, and it's a voice message from Al Pacino about so that was that. Yeah, that was quite the process, and it was pretty eye-opening. I left my day job when Hangman was, I think, first optioned, or when I started to get some traction, thinking like, here's the springboard. I don't need to have a day job. And then 5 years went by before oh, okay. So that's my little tidbit for up and coming writers out there, that even if your thing is optioned, even if your thing is bought, I think maybe it was bought before I actually left the day job. It doesn't mean
it's not.
Yeah.
Your career is a process. It's like there's not the moment you have made it. There's lots of little moments.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and everybody, and I also have noticed, over the years that different producers and different, it really, like how films are financed, everything is, there's no set standard. So, the guys I'm working with now, I'll write a script for them, and then it's going in production in a couple months. That turnaround is how they work. Whereas, I'm not doing many rewrites and things like that. Luckily, I think I've evolved this and gotten better as a writer too. But I just think different people have different, setups of how they're going to do it, or how the money's coming through, or whatever. So yeah, I don't know. I know there's certain backstories with Hangman that I'll never know, I'm not privy to. But that's my kind of Cliff Note version of Hangman.
Yeah. Well, of course, that like, you know, there's that moment when like one of the people you look up to, hey, I got an you're frozen on me.
Yeah.
So
I got
hold on.
bits and pieces. Sorry.
Okay. Okay, I know. Let me try again.
Okay.
Well, the next thing I'm curious about is Hunter's Moon, because you mentioned it was partially, you know, filmed in Louisville, where I'm from, and and currently live about 15 minutes outside of. So how did that come about, and how is Hunter's Moon? What was different about Hunter's Moon, your Hunter's Moon experience, than your Hangman experience?
Yeah. So we filmed 6 days. We filmed for 6 days in Kentucky, in Louisville, like you said. Hunter's Moon came about. My manager and good friend at the time, and who would during Hangman as well, had said, you know, he knew that I'd always wanted to direct, and I was doing some side work. I had done like a ghost job for another director, and was trying to help that director basically produce the script that we ended up working on together, so he could direct. And my manager at the time, his name's Chris, said, you know, all the effort that you're putting in to help get this other project off the ground, why don't you just focus on, don't you have something you want to direct, and why don't you do that? So I went to Arnold Rifkin, who had produced Hangman, took him to lunch, and he had said, it was kind of like a meeting. Everything happened at the right time. Arnold said, do you still want to direct? I said, yeah, I do. He said, do you have anything that you can do for under $2 million? I said, yeah, I have this project. It was called The Orchard at the time. I think it's got a cool twist. It's, you know, relatively contained. It's kind of in my wheelhouse. It's a story I really wanted to tell. And so he had a production company interested. We kind of went through the steps with them, trying to get talent attached in order to trigger, you know, minimum guarantees and get distribution before we started shooting. And I was kind of chasing my tail, I want to say for about a year almost, just trying to get a casting piece in the role of the sheriff, that ultimately ended up going to Thomas Jane years later. So this was back in 20, let's see. Actually, I think this was 2017. So right when Hangman had come out, we'd gotten some financing, some backers, and I basically told them, you know, we're going to go to Kentucky. You know, got their approval. Can I film as much as I can with the money we have, and basically cut together like a little teaser trailer, and then try and, you know, get the rest of the money. And that was the original plan. Right. We ended up having a recast, and so a lot of the stuff that we did shoot in Kentucky didn't make it into the film. We had a different actor originally for the sheriff, and so we came back, we regrouped, and it took until 2019, actually, so 2 years, for us to get Thomas Jane involved, to get the rest of the financing in place. And we shot the rest of it just outside of, we're right in Los Angeles, not in Los Angeles, but just outside of the city itself. And then we had to kind of marry the two pieces together. The Kentucky look is very different, obviously, palm trees versus, you know, woods and things like that. So yeah. So luckily I had a really great editor. And, you know, the other part is, you know, I produced that too. So I wrote, directed.
Oh, wow.
And so everything, you know, part of Hangman for me was like also the experience of seeing the difference between what happens from page to screen, you know, the good and the bad. Right. And I think part of that was like, I just wanted to have more control and have more of a fingerprint, which also has good and bad parts to it too. So, you know, Hunter's Moon is definitely a labor of love. A lot of people, I don't think, ever thought we were going to finish it because of the recast, because of the two-year gap. But, you know, funny thing happened during that gap. The actors all had kind of worked together for that 6-day period with, you know, pre-production prior to that for a bit. And so they kind of kept in touch over that 2 years. So when they got back to filming, you know, they play most of them are family. So the one side is a bunch of brothers, and then the other side is the family with Jay Mohr and Amanda Weiss and the daughters. Staying in touch, they all had this, it was like, it had more of a genuine feel relationship wise, because they had basically had 2 years where they wouldn't have had that time to just kind of, you know, I think they'd gotten together. Some of them had gotten together during the 2 years and just hung out, and just little things like that, or just staying in touch. So I felt like, as far as performances and in that part, I kind of lucked out, you know, kind of fell into that because of that. So that was tough. I mean, we literally sunk every dollar that we had into that, to the point where we myself and one of the other producers are still paying out of pocket for a few things on the movie, believe it or not, that's been out since 2020. Some money that was owed. So where, when they really, put your money where your mouth is, or passion project or whatever, that's it. There's parts that I really love about that movie, but I think the best thing that came out of that movie was just resiliency, and just the ability just never to quit, and just to finish and get it done. And put everything I have into that film. So is it perfect? No, far from it, but I'm really proud. And I think that's kind of indicative of, it's reflective of who I am as a person. And then also, for my career, I've been trying to chase this dream for 20 years. I've just kind of outlasted people that I moved to LA in 1999. And so people that I was friends with, or who were, actors or directors or writers or whatever, trying to make it, that I met in 99, they, most of them aren't in the business. They've gone on their different lives, or moved, or had a family, whatever.
Yeah, that's funny. I would, if I was going to put a date on when I got into the business, I had to keep my video off because it's wanting to freeze every time. So forgive me. When me and Missy actually said, okay, we're going to make a go for this, we didn't have enough money to move to LA. So we moved to San Antonio and started our career there. And that's where the movie Letters to Daniel starts in 1999. And so, it's kind of crazy that and you talk about outlasting, and it's just about it. Whenever I was reading John's bio he did for you on Facebook, there was just so much. And I think about, it's about outworking and outlasting. Perseverance is the most, and endurance are the most important keys, because this business will knock you down. And Letters to Daniel, like you say, with Hunter's Moon, I'm very proud of. I am clear on its flaws, right, because it was a $6,000 movie, right? Yeah. But and we shot it in 6 days. But I had a cinematographer, an amazing cinematographer who I learned a lot from on that film. And his name is Mark Manis, and he's been in the industry for well over 30 years. And he's now in the Producers Guild of America, and he's just brilliant. But even though I know there are some flaws, I made a feature for, and I know some people went, we called it our springboard, like the swing for the fences. Like, right. I'm in Kentucky, I'm in Kentucky now because I have bipolar disorder, which we'll get into in a minute. And it became our swing for the fences. Like, we tried to pitch it, to independent filmmakers. They said, oh, I don't have enough time to do this. I really need X amount of time to do it. I really need, someone told me they had to have $75,000 to do it. And it was like, everybody was telling me no, but Dell was that person besides Missy, because Missy is my co-writer and producer on everything. And he said, direct it, Amy. I knew if I gave it to somebody else, they would make it into something they wanted. Right. And so, it's just, I know people are going to think it's crazy, but it's as simple as making up your mind to do it. And it took me 7 years to get it made, from the time, we had several setbacks. Like you said, I had to go back and do this. And so, I can really relate to your journey. And finally, I have a script. There's a director of The Kitchen, the writer-director of The Kitchen, with Melissa McCarthy and Tiffany Haddish. She is critiquing my script right now. Wow. And there's a production company reading it for consideration. So I'm just now getting to that part where you talk about where there might be studio involvement and stuff like that. So I it reminds me of Holland Taylor when she won her Emmy for The Practice with Dylan McDermott and Cameron Manheim, and she went overnight, and clearly it was not overnight, but it's like 10 years an overnight success. So
a 10-year, yeah, exactly.
Now I want to talk about your series. You actually are in the second season of your series called Purgatory that is on Pop TV. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, that's it's on Popstar TV, which it's an app. You can go to the website, but if you have Apple TV or Google, what is it? Google Chrome, Google Fire Stick, any of those, you can download the app. You can download the app obviously on your computer as well. That was a show that was originally an Armenian show, and it was called Purgatory as well. So they had done. I don't know how many episodes it was in Armenia, but basically there's a company here in Los Angeles called ATI that has a working relationship with some producers in Armenia. And their kind of formula, if you will, is they take Armenian shows, translate them into English. And the first couple of shows that they had done, they just brought a director from the States to go work with the director for the original Armenian version and did do an English version. So I got involved with them through my producing partner who did Hunter's Moon with me, named Clay. Had me work on one of the series, just one of the scripts. It's called Death Squad. That was the one they did before Purgatory. And then they hired me to just do kind of a rewrite. It was definitely it's not a high budget production either. They had me do the rewrite for Purgatory, and I was really getting into it. And as I was getting, it was a funny story. I know the girl who was basically doing the translation from Armenia to English. And as I was getting the scripts, they kept getting shorter and shorter. And at one point, I think I got a script that was like a whole episode. It was like 8 pages. And so her name is Sosi. So I called her up and I was like, Sosi, what's happening? How am I supposed to do a 42-minute episode? This is just as a writer. I didn't have any directing thing going on at this point. You give me 8 pages. What is it? She's like, I'm just cutting out Armenian television is very similar to like telenovelas. So there's like you and I would be having this conversation, and then I would leave, and this is the show. It would be like you and I have this conversation, and then I would go in the other room and I would tell my wife the same conversation that you and I just had. So it was also, everything was like foreshadowed. It was just, it's soap opera.
Right.
And I'm not a soap opera kind of guy. So I remember saying, I called Clay. I said, this is what's happening. Can I put my stamp on this? Can I really do it? And he was like, sure. And so we did. So I did that, and he was like, "Do you want to direct this?" And I said, "Yeah." Actually, as I got into it, basically the story is, and then there were none. Agatha Christie's, and then there were none. I think it was called 10 Little Indians at one point. But it's that it's a formula that's been done before. A bunch of strangers go to a certain place. They think that they're there for celebration or something special, and then there's one by one they start dying.
Yes.
It's not the we're not reinventing the wheel here, in other words.
No.
But in Armenia they have a man-made cave that we shot in, and it was absolutely extraordinary. I mean, we're not talking like a little cave where Bear lives in. We're talking tunnels and lights and working lights,
nice.
level really underneath, and it's underneath someone's house. So we shot there. So the production value for what it's worth is pretty amazing. But we were shooting. We had 2 cameras. We were handheld. We had used Maros Paros kind of as our, film that we could all watch and say, this is the kind of, not necessarily tone, but visual style that we wanted to do, just to make sure, because I was working with an Armenian director named Hayek, a brilliant director. And the rest of the crew was Armenian as well. Artur, who's the DP, was fantastic. And, I just need to make sure that we had translators, and some, their English is far better than my Armenian, but that was the way for us to just kind of say, like, hey, here's the blueprint. We want to do handheld. We want to do this. And everyone agreed on the look. So we shot like soap opera. We shot 15 to 25 page days, almost every day. And we were out there. We were originally going to do, I was only do 8 episodes, and another director was going to come in. But then they were like, do you want to stay and do all 16? I said, yeah. I was really enjoying myself and the country and the people. And experience. And then COVID hit. Yeah, and it was weird. It was kind of like, you know, being in another country and just hearing little tidbits of stuff that, you know, oh, this pandemic's happening, but it wasn't. It was kind of how it was here in the States too. Like, you know, no one was freaking out about it. It was over there, and then all of a sudden started to get wind that traveling, and you know, I probably was not quite as dialed in as some of the other people in the production, and we just kept going. And then all of a sudden, the State Department for the U.S. basically said to us, if you want to come home, you guys got to leave now, because either they're going to shut the borders or we're going to shut the borders, and you guys are going to be stuck over there. So we got on a plane. We literally got the last plane out and flew back. And I feel like this was March of 2020. That is right, March of 2020. We came back and we kind of figured out that we could cut together what we had and basically break it into 2 seasons at that point. Originally, it was just going to do 16 episodes and be 1 season. So we there was a very important part. That's supposed to be the climax, basically, of episode 8 that we didn't film. We were going to film at the very end because it was a flashback. So we needed our actors, especially our male actors, to shave and look younger. And so we didn't get that. It was also a big stunt thing. It's a car crash. So we had to kind of work around that. So we got back to the States, and basically for the next 10 to 12 weeks, we just edited and figured out how to pull from episode 9. Because we were already shooting parts of episode 9. We shot almost all of 9 and parts of 10 before we had come back. So we put together 8 really solid episodes. Everybody was really happy with it. And then the moment that we were able to go back, we basically went back for, I'll say, like another month and shot the remainder to get the other 8, or what was left of the other 8, and then came back and edited those. So we just, the second season just finished on Popstar, so you can stream it now. You can basically binge both seasons, but they're 42-minute episodes. And yeah, I'm really proud of it. The performances are fantastic, and it was just one of those things where people were hungry. You know, everyone saw potential. Nobody was getting rich off of it. The budget was so small. I mean, obviously the dollar travels a little further there, but you know, there was no. It was one of the most enjoyable experiences in terms of production for me, anyways. In regards to just everybody just showed up to work. Everyone was excited, whether it was actors, whether it was, you know, crew, whatever. And it was kind of a real. I mean, there's always a family feel to filmmaking, especially on location. Right. But this one had, I think, just people saw. I mean, maybe it was even before we started shooting, but I think after the first day, people were like, "Wow, this is really moving." And we never, even though we were doing 15 to, I think the most we did 26 pages one day. That was the most we did. But even though we were doing at least 15 pages a day, we never went over 12 hours, which was amazing. So we were, like I said, we were flying. Having 2 cameras helps, but also once they were in the cave, there's not a lot of footage you can get when people are stuck in this, you know, cave. It's like, yeah, there were 14 characters down there, and once they start killing them, it goes even faster. But coverage for 14 people is a lot.
Yes.
But there's no space, so you know, if someone's right here and someone's right here, you know, we're just cheating and we're just going to do a 2-shot, because why am I doing? Yeah. I can't do 2. They're too close. You know. Yeah. Season 1, we basically picked our spots, which is also something that I did in Hunter's Moon. In the LA portion, because you know, we had 8 days to basically film an entire movie in LA. You had mentioned, you know, your tight schedule. We did the same thing with Hunter's Moon. So you kind of learn and you evolve in terms of like,
right. It's like, you know, you were talking. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. You know how you were talking about that family feel that you had with Purgatory. It was because everybody, you know, obviously the budget wasn't large, but people were hungry. They saw the potential in the project. And really I had everybody who was involved. It was, I want to say Letters to Daniel was the most blissful experience, but at the same time, it's the hardest thing I ever did, which leads into our next section. Have you, with my mental illness, I had to really have my best friend there, and everybody, it wasn't just that everybody was pulling for each other. Right. And they were they all put their trust in me. And like, even now, I can't believe it, but when dealing with work, have you ever been directly or indirectly affected by mental illness?
I mean, personally, my thing is, I deal with depression. It's certainly different than, bipolar or some of, some other mental health issues, but it does certainly present its challenges and anxiety. I mean, I know that's not quite the same again on the same level, but they're connected. And I've dealt with anxiety and panic attacks since I was 19, 20 when this started happening. Yeah. So there's that. And I think the mind is it's so interesting. I mean, I used to run restaurants before I was, directing and screenwriting, and it was the same thing. Like, it's interesting with anxiety, like you'll be extremely busy and I won't have any panic attacks. And then the moment that everything slows down and your body's like, oh, yeah, now you totally have your moment. And then all of a sudden you can't breathe and you think you're having a heart attack. And, there's all these things. So I've dealt with that for so long. I'm not on medication. I've done therapy probably just all of my entire life, dealing with, childhood trauma and things like that. And those things help. It's just a matter of, I've always been open about it too. Even when I'm on set, a lot of times, initially I was not quite as open about it. So I would find, the first AD and I would say, look, I carry lavender oil almost everywhere I go, pretty much. I said, if you smell this, I'm dealing with some anxiety and I don't need you to do anything. Just need to let you know that either I'm having trouble breathing or it could be mild. I just need to relax or whatever. But that's just for you to know. And so if you need to just be aware of it. And then as I got into the business a little bit more, I started to see that, I was in a place where I don't have shame of it, and I realized I'm more fortunate than others that deal with more intense forms of mental illness and mental health issues. But
they have their, to me, they're not all the same, but they're all in the same family. So, I mean, they all deserve respect.
That's kind of why I also think by voicing, I can only speak, for my own.
Right.
By being open about it, I think it helps start conversations. And it also, people are always kind of a little amazed too, like, wow, I had no idea. And it's like, well, I've worked really hard so that you don't have any idea. And it's even, I've been with my kids and I've had full blown panic attacks when they were little, when I was by myself with them. And it's like, oh my God, how am I going to get through this? And, there's things that I can do physically that help, cutting out alcohol certainly helps, exercise, things like that. Food, diet obviously helps for me anyways. But on set, there's just so many things that are going on. And what I found is the more that I started talking about it, other people were like, yeah, I have that same thing, or I know someone that does, or whatever. And then like, people would go, can I get some of that lavender oil? And it became kind of a little bit of a, but we all smelled really good on Purgatory. We all smelled not kidding, I'm serious. I ended up gifting the other director a little bottle because he's like, I deal with that too. I didn't know that, lavender would help. I said, I really think lavender oils and therapies kept me off of medication. Otherwise, I'd be on something. I've thought about it. And as far as depression, there's days where I think depression hits me more in the writing phase because it's more of a solitary thing. And, there's days where I don't want to get out of bed.
I know that.
Yeah, that's hard. I have 3 young kids and they don't, you can't tell a 4-year-old there's nothing physically wrong with me. I don't have a cold. I don't have a headache. I just don't want to do it. Just don't want to do anything. I just want to sit here. I just don't, and it's like a weird, and then, there's ways that I've worked on that as well. And it's just one of those things, when you see people that struggle, I think empathy is a huge thing. And I think the more people talk about it, I think people will be more empathetic in regards to what other people are going through, because it's hard for, with depression in particular, people are like, just work through it. Just get over it. Just look at everything that you have. Yeah. Like,
Yeah.
why?
It's like I try to tell people, my insides don't always line up with what my outside look, right?
That's
Everybody says
100%.
you should be so happy. And I'm like, you don't understand. And the worst is what I call a mixed episode, where you're experiencing like symptoms of both mania. It's called a dysphoric mania,
Yeah.
where you're feeling depression and some of the energy that comes with mania.
Mhm.
And you know, they say you should be happy. I said, well, you know, my brain's just wired differently. Now,
Right.
I do take medication because I do have mania, and I do not want to. Manias are dictated by the depressions,
Mm.
and the manias can, depression is destructive, but when mania is destructive, there's stuff like you go on spending sprees. Some people get hypersexual, and you know, like relationships are destroyed, and
Wow.
depression. But you know, I experienced it. Anxiety was the big thing. Anxiety is, if I have a high level of it, is like a trigger for the mania.
Oh, okay.
So, but I do take medication, but what I think is important about having everybody on here that I do is that the illnesses, it's not like a silver bullet. It's like, I love lavender oil, by the way, because when I'm really anxious, I love to have that stuff.
Yeah.
I think there's all different tips and tricks for yourself and treatment that you can deal with. Like, there's a grounding exercise that my therapist gave me.
The
So
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I use that all the time. I use that.
I get. Do you find I don't have any shame, like, right? Because letters to Daniel, Missy said, what are you gonna do when people see how you act and stuff? I mean, I said, Missy, I did a blog, I did a memoir, and I did a proof of concept documentary. That ship's done sailed, or as we say in Kentucky, the horse is done out of the barn. So you know, it's
Yeah.
We made a movie about our friendship through the hardest part of my bipolar disorder and how we came through that. So it's like, and like you said, it opens up conversation, and everybody on, like one of my lead actresses, actually, who played Missy in the movie, she came up to me at the end and she said, you really helped me work through a lot of issues I have with my mother, who is bipolar, who has bipolar disorder. And you know, and like you said, those actresses were just beautiful, and they've won. Like Megan, who played me's gotten 5 awards and 11 nominations. And
Wow.
yeah, right. So that movie allows me to talk about something I'm very passionate about, and I feel like this show is kind of like the legacy of that movie. So well, I'm gonna switch to some fun questions.
Okay.
If your life were a movie, what would the title be?
Oh boy, it's fun. You didn't say fun. Challenging. If my life was a movie, what would the title be? Unfinished.
Okay. If anybody in the known cinematic universe could play that role, who would you want it to be? Who would play you in that title?
To play me? Oh wow. That's a good one. Lately I've been on a Tom Hardy kick, so I'll say Tom Hardy.
Okay, that's a good one. Have you, during your career, had any chances to meet like the people who have inspired you most in your creative journey? And what was it like if you did?
Boy, that's a good one. Indirectly, I did. So Nightmare on Elm Street was huge for me, especially in Wes Craven in particular. It was one of the reasons I started writing, as was Scream, as was Good Will Hunting. It's a weird combination of movies.
That Good Will Hunting was the first movie that me and Missy saw together before we started writing. So
yeah, saw that in college, and I think there was that and Scream, and I think right after that I started writing screenplays. I'd always been a writing. Right? It was when I was like, oh, maybe I should try screenwriting. I did a web series back in 2001 called Luke 1117, and it was a serial killer web series, and it was kind of before web series were really big. And there were web series, but they were like little short 2-minute comedy little episodes, and we were doing 8 to 10-minute narrative pieces that if you put them all together basically makes like a feature. And it was very dark. And so Wes Craven, I don't know if they still do this, but YouTube would have a celebrity director or someone involved that would pick what was on the front page of YouTube for Halloween.
Right.
Would pick things. So Wes picked one of our episodes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it was so I got the call, and I remember thinking prior to Hangman and Al Pacino, that was like, wow, my life couldn't get any better. I remember like jumping around my small apartment and excited. And so I didn't ever talk to Wes. We did send him a bottle of wine. And so it was just that whole, it was like a non-connective. I mean, I guess I met him somewhat. Like, you know, I didn't actually talk to him. But it was still this thing of like, wow, someone who I admire greatly and who has completely influenced me and scared the living daylights out of me, even to this day. You know, Nightmare on Elm Street, it still freaks me out. My kids know about it, and they tease me a little bit. But even having, you know, Amanda Weiss was in Hunter's Moon, was the first actress killed by Freddy and played Tina. So I thought her in my movie would help me not be so afraid of Nightmare on Elm Street. It didn't work. It's like, how can I be afraid of someone when I've literally watched the person that they killed in my movie? Anyways, and I'm friends with her. It's just ridiculous. But that's probably my long-winded answer to your question. I think having Wes pick Luke 1117 for Halloween, it was pretty cool.
I think someone once asked me who's like in the faith-based film world, they always assume that it's Book of Daniel. I said no, it's James Bond. It's Daniel Craig. That's who, you know, he's the one who inspired me in the movies, right? And if I got a chance to meet him, I don't know if I'd even be able to hold my shit together, but it would be neat to meet him because I have literally built a franchise of stuff around writing a letter to him. So it's not about him, but, you know, writing like that invisible audience, you know. Okay, so final question.
Okay.
If you had any wisdom or advice to give someone who is striving to make it in the entertainment industry, but is also struggling with, you're not always struggling, but someone who might be struggling or dealing with mental health issues, what advice would you give them?
I think the advice works for both, you know, dealing with the issues and chasing a dream. Like we talked about earlier, you're just never giving up. It's realizing that there's going to be ups and downs and being okay with both of them. You know, I think one of the stigmas around mental health is that, you know, it's okay to have a you day or a you moment, whatever. Take care of yourself, because, you know, I started recently during the pandemic, really working out and getting in shape, and because I want to, you know, be able to walk my daughter down the aisle, who's 4, obviously, so I'm thinking ahead. But my genetics and my family, most of them anyways, don't lend themselves to longevity and long lives, particularly my parents. So I'm aware of that. So I guess my advice is be aware of who you are, accept yourself, love yourself. I think loving yourself is huge. Confidence goes a long way. We're all insecure. Some of the most confident people are always insecure. They just hide it better or they've overcome it or whatever. But just accept and if you're in your moments, love yourself, be gentle with yourself, but just don't give up and realize that it's okay. One of the things that helps me too day to day is one day at a time, or one step at a time, or one thing at a time. You know, sometimes I'm overwhelmed, or I see someone who's overwhelmed. I'm like, just break it down, do one thing at a time. And we talked about depression earlier. You know, one of the things that gets me out of bed, it's like, I just got to do one thing. Go wash the dishes. Wash the dishes. It's something that like you can do sleepwalk through, but there's a completion to it. And once you start doing that, and I'm not saying this is the cure for it, I'm not that foolish, but like it helps those things. So it's like, find little ways. And also another big takeaway from me, and I've really been focusing on this lately, is celebrate your wins. No matter.
Yeah, definitely. No matter how small.
Yeah. On Twitter, you know, one of the things, the writers, the screenwriters on Twitter, they go back and forth. And I remember getting blocked by a bunch of people because I chimed in on a thread that was really gross. It was like working writers were bashing up and coming writers, or people who were trying to come up, for celebrating like, oh, someone's reading my script and they're excited. And like people were saying like, oh, they're just making it up. And it's like, first of all, who cares if they are making it up? That's their thing.
Yeah, I mean, right.
Also,
that's
like, if you place in a competition, or if an agent's reading your script, or if an actor's reading your script, or someone downloaded your script from whatever, I've realized as I've gotten older that we are so programmed. I think I've been listening to a lot of people that I admire lately too, which is the other thing. YouTube is great for being able to listen to motivational things or people you admire. And I think it was Will Smith was saying, there's a condition, or I don't know if he made it up or not. But he basically said when iRobot came out, it had made $70 million opening weekend, and it had broken records for whatever that weekend was. And he said, I knew I had an issue, because the moment I heard the 70 million, I called my producing partner and I said, hey, why do you think we didn't get 80? Do you think if we changed it, is it the ending? Like if we change the ending, do you think it'd be different? And my producing partner said, I'm speaking for Will here. Will, we just broke every record. You made $70 million. You're a star. What are you worried about? Yeah, but I just want to know, how come we didn't get to 80? And he said, it's the only time the producing partners ever hung up on him. And he realized that he had an issue because it was never about the moment. It was never about being accepting the win. It was always about what's next and how do I get to the next level? And part of what has driven me so for the last 20 years is I'm going to get to a place and I'm going to be happy. I'm going to get to a place and I'm going to have money. I'm going to get to a place and I'm going to be successful. And it's a cliche, but it's like, it's the journey, not the destination. It is.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm writing a whole book about that.
Yeah. Well, we're going to blink. And that's the thing, with getting in shape and wanting to walk my daughter. I'm going to blink and my daughter is going to be getting married, or she is going, if she wants to get married, but she's going to be a grown up, and I'm going to blink over. And so I every day I really focus on what's important. I think that's the other thing, like chasing a dream. There's a lot that goes into that. But if you really sit down and really basically, Matthew McConaughey talks about this quite a bit too, really know what you're aiming for, what's really important to you, because if it's ambiguous, and so I did that. I sat down and I realized, as much as, fame or celebrity or success in the business or whatever are my desire, they're not important to me, to the sense that like, having my kids know that, that I love them is a big thing. I went through and I did my list, and it was very personal, and it was like very eye-opening. I think that's something too. Like, so celebrate your wins, know why you're doing things, stay in the moment, love yourself, be okay with the ups and downs, because you're going to have both. And realize that downs, they teach you something. At the very least, they show you, and be proud of yourself. If you're down and you get to an up, that's an accomplishment. I mean, if you're struggling and you have any mental health issues or physical issues or whatever, and you're still able to get up and do it and see another day and continue to do what you love and chase that's a win in itself, in my opinion, because there's people that quit. There's people, like I said, there's people that get up and they go to a job that they hate. And if you can still do something that you love, whether you're getting paid for it or not, one thing or another, that's amazing. I don't want to wake up on my deathbed. I don't want to go like, man, I wish, I really wish. You
regret the things you didn't do, not the things you did do. It's like I said, I've run a marathon and I've survived bipolar disorder. And I'm like, nothing else matters. I just take joy. I'm saying, if you aren't finding joy in the creative process, you're probably in the wrong business, because if you're chasing fame and wanting those things. There's nothing wrong with wanting those things, but if they become the reason you're doing the thing, you're not going to be happy, because those are something you have no control over.
And that's the thing too. It's you literally have no control over what other people are going to think. So, when you're writing your screenplay, just keeping it in the writing world, and you're in that middle of that second act and you're just like frustrated and you're like, oh, it's so tedious. It's enjoy that moment. Sit down. I think it was, who was it? Jon Favreau. I had a chance to go to something at the Producers Guild, I think years ago. And he was talking about swingers and maid. And he was saying, writers, you think it's stressful and hard trying to find your swingers. Wait till you have a swingers and then you go to make maid. He's like, the most stressful life was following up swingers. He's like, in hindsight, swingers and chasing swingers and getting to swingers, the journey was amazing. And then once you have that hit, the expectations are so much there, you can't even comprehend what they are because they don't make any sense. He said that was a nightmare. And since then, obviously, he's done Elf and Marvel movies.
Oh, I love Elf. Elf is my favorite. Yeah.
Yeah, he's extremely gifted. But I took that to heart, and I thought, so now when I sit down and I don't really want to write, and it's like, and I also have to kick myself because I don't have a day job. We've had some really tight times. I guess that's another bit of advice for people. Even if you have stuff made and you're a produced writer and you're a working writer or director, financially times can still be tough. My family has been, we've had some really tight times, and it's hard to be creative when you're stressed about the world. So again, go back to the wins. You running your marathon, you dealing with bipolar, those are huge wins. You're still a creative. You have all these movies. I see all the successes that you have, and that's why I love that you celebrate them, and that's why I love that you tag me in them, because it's like, I love supporting other people too. And one more thing, it's not a competition amongst other creative people. I never understood that either. Celebrate, when people get representation, whether it's on Twitter or you know them personally or whatever, when someone has a movie coming out, that's amazing. The other thing that Hunter's Moon taught me is even getting a movie made, I will never bash a movie ever in my life. You'll never hear me say something negative about a movie publicly. I'll have my opinions. I'll keep it to myself.
Yeah.
To get a movie finished, I don't care what the budget is a miracle, especially in this environment. Like there's more out to do it now, but it's getting even harder. The independent world is pinching, and it's getting even smaller, and there's so many things that have to happen to get it made. So celebrate each other's wins, celebrate your own wins. That's my extremely long-winded answer to your question.
Well, okay. So John, are there any questions from the audience for us, or do you have anything you want to add?
No questions from the audience. I have a question. Michael, so you named a couple movies as the impetus for beginning your career in the industry. Were there any other moments or like kind of just give us a little bit of like what led up to that process where you actually made that decision and took the leap?
Well, there were big leaps. My grandmother has always been my biggest champion. So she, even when I was young, she was always telling me just keep writing. So Hunter's Moon is dedicated to her, and that's she recently passed. Not too recently, but fairly recent. And she's the matriarch of the family, and she was 94, 96. She's the outlier in terms of people that live long in my family. So having her was huge for me. But moving to LA, just making that decision to go from Massachusetts to LA, I had to decide between New York and Atlanta wasn't a thing at that moment. But I wanted to just kind of get 3,000 miles away and start over and just chase this dream and palm trees and sunshine and all sort of stuff. So that was, it was just a matter of, I didn't want to I went to Boston College. I was going to school for business. I realized I was taking more theater classes and spending more time at Emerson College, which was a liberal arts college in the city, and going to parties and talking about movies and art. And it was a very different culture, whereas, I love Boston College, I always will. But it was like those parties were sports and politics and things like, important. But like, then I would go and talk art, and I just clearly was like, this is where I'm driven. So that was the first thing. But deciding to leave my day job, I was married. I had one child at the time, and I was running restaurants. I was working like 70 to 90 hour work weeks. I'd opened a restaurant, and I realized that I was making good money too. I said, I didn't come to LA to run restaurants. I was good at it. There's a creative aspect of it, but I realized I can get stuck in day jobs. I've done it. That's part of the reason I think, I mean, luck has a lot to do with it too, but I think it's why it's taken 20 years for my career to kind of go, because I would take day jobs and then I would make careers out of it. It's happened like 3 times for me, where I started like some entry level job and all of a sudden next thing I'm management and running and whatever. So I think the push or the kick was just, talking to my wife and saying, Hangman was bought and ready to go into production or somewhere close, I think, at that point. And it was just like, if this isn't going to be a kick or a springboard, what else? What am I waiting for? If a movie with Al Pacino isn't the time to stay like, pull out, get rid of plan B altogether. But it did scary things. I've been doing ghostwriting jobs just family for the last it's been feast or famine. There's been tight times, but it's also, I realized that it's really hard. I tip my hat to people that have day jobs, because I did it for so long too. It's hard to have a day job, then be creative, worry about bills. Then it's like having 3 different lives. I literally get up now. I struggle financially, stressed about that sometimes, but my life is my family and my career. That's it. I don't have anything else. So I think sometimes you just have to take that leap of faith. I'm not encouraging everybody to just quit their day job. That's not what I'm trying to say, but you just got to have to believe. I think there's a belief. I never, as weird as it sounds, I never thought I didn't have a plan B. I know I'm good at doing other things, but I never in my mind did I go, I'm not going to make it. And I know that's like a weird thing to say, but I've had moments where I'm like, maybe I should think of something else, but there's always just been this mindset. So I think that was something. And then just seeing reaction to particularly actors. When actors would read my material, they would relate to it and they would say, this is really good. I had a hard time, like gatekeepers or different stories, execs and stuff would read an entire script and go, I love everything but the ending. And I'm like, oh, cool. Buy it. I'll change the ending. No, we're not going to buy it. You love everything but the ending. It's like the weirdest, the mindset of certain things that makes no sense. But actors would read it and go like, why isn't this getting made? And so it was like, oh, all right, here's somebody who's been in the business X amount of years, whatever, does this for a living, is saying this should get made. So I guess it was like a kind of a validation in terms of the material, because you're writing for an audience. But at the end of the day, at the very beginning, I always work character out anyways. So if the actors are going, there's something here, I want to play this, okay, that helped me. That was the reassurance I needed to kind of make that jump too, like that I can do this and do it well.
Are there projects other than Purgatory that you're currently working on?
There's a few. I did a movie called No Tears in Hell in Alabama and Alaska, actually, this year, that's in post-production right now. It's a serial killer movie based on a true story in Russia in the 90s. It's super intense, the most intense thing I've ever done. So it's one of these things where there's certain people that I'm close to, I'm going to say, don't watch this. I mean, it was, people were crying at the monitor. I left and started sobbing for a while. Like it was, the death scenes were pretty intense. And so I think there's something there. I'm really proud of it. So I wrote and directed that. That's in post. I'm assuming, it will be done next month. So that's early next year. I'm not sure about the release or any of that stuff. And then what else I have going on? Just finished an action script that I think I'm directing. It's kind of up in the air at the moment. That's how these things kind of work. And then the sci-fi one, the same guys that I did the job for in Alabama hired me, that I'm supposed to direct January, February. That's kind of a like The Thing meets Aliens. It's kind of a hybrid between the two. It's a sci-fi thriller kind of thing that I'm really excited about. And then, I think I'm trying to find a publisher for a book, as Amy knows. But I adapted one of my scripts into a book. So I'm taking the long road to seeing if I can get traditional publishing on that.
Okay.
And
well,
that's it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, John,
I was going to ask just where can people find more out about you? What website do you want to let them know, or what social media sites do you want them to know about you?
I'm on Instagram, Michael Caissie, just my name. I'm on Twitter. That's how Amy and I kind of met and talked first and foremost. So I think it's at Michael Caissie. That's probably, if you want to actually communicate with me, I like to interact, and I'm pretty approachable within reason. Obviously, if you're respectful, and sometimes I get busy and it might take a minute or two, but that's probably the best way. Facebook, I'm a little bit more selective just because I have a lot of family stuff on there and things like that. But I try that. That's probably, I don't have a website really, but Purgatory on the Popstar app, you can see 2 seasons, 16 episodes. I think it's a lot of fun and engaging, and it's, my wife was watching it, so it's one of these things where I think it appeals to a mass audience, because like my wife has still not got all the way through Hangman because she's not a horror fan, which is interesting, considering that we're married and what I do for a living. But those are, and Hunter's Moon is, and actually Hangman's on Netflix, and Hunter's Moon is, I think, still on Amazon for purchase.
Okay.
I'm thinking start going somewhere soon, but yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Michael. Good to meet you. Thanks for coming on.
Likewise. Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
I really had a great time. Hope to do it again sometime. Thank you. I really appreciate it.
All right. Sounds good. That's Michael Caissie, everybody. Amy, what's up next week?
Hopefully it's Annabelle. She is shooting Bridezilla this month, so she's supposed to be our last show of November. If she isn't, the reason why I let up on Les Murphy was because his dad had passed away actually 2 days before we were going to have him on the show. So I'm going to circle back and touch base with him and see how he feels. So it'll either be Annabelle Monroe, who was the Queen of AOF and was on our special episode about Branson, and or it'll be Les Murphy, who is an actor, writer, and who I met at Imaginarium. So, and then, of course, the screenings of the movie come up.
Right on. All right, everybody. Thanks for watching Recovery Unplugged Live. Thank you for our special guest, Michael Caissie. And we will see you all next Monday. And hopefully, I will have my voice back.
Get that voice back. Thank you, guys.
All right.
Take
Thanks,
care.
Michael.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
I came from the mud, there's dirt on my hands, strong like a tree, there's roots where I stand. Oh, I've been running from the law, try to catch me howling at the moon.